What are some steps the state should take to address the racial disparities we see across the state?
Well, thank you. And first of all, I think that it would be really good for the GOP caucus to hear what Ben has to say, because he's exactly right, and that does not echo what they think. This idea of getting out of the teacher's way is really important, and letting the teachers run their classroom is important. When it comes to racial disparities, I think I would go a step farther than what Ben said. I think we do know, right? What we know is that in places where parents can't make a living wage, we also find there's a correlation with how well their students do in the racial equity gap, period. That's just where it's at. And we've had solutions to that we've been unable to pass because my friends across the aisle don't want to support transit in Minneapolis and St. Paul. Our district is blessed with tons of Fortune 500 companies and other countries that have companies that want to hire, but there isn't transportation in the northern part of our district, and there isn't any transit, and every attempt we had to get transit through doesn't pass. And if you want to start talking about racial equity, the first thing you need to talk about is just economic equity. Because everybody wants to be a good parent, regardless of their race or anything else. Everybody wants their kids to thrive. Put them in a spot where they're able to make a living wage and pay their bills. They can be home with their kids, and then they can be more successful in that respect, and the kids are more successful. It's a generational thing that's been going on for a while. And it isn't really a secret, right? We've seen this go on in many locations across the country, and it's no different in Minneapolis and St. Paul. And so I hope that if we understand we want to address educational equity, we need to address economic equity to solve that problem. Thanks.
Oh, rebuttals?
I'll just quick add a little bit in here. I think it's really like Senator Isaacson saying, it's really the chicken or the egg, right? It's which has to come first, and until we really start to dive into the problems there and take this seriously and really closing the gaps, I don't know if we're going to know if it's the economic part that has to come first or the education. And maybe it's one that has to come together. And that's where I do believe, once again, that's where we just need to change the conversation and have this conversation at the state capitol, and not just always have the argument about how much money. Because once again, we need to make sure that these programs are having the outcomes that they're supposed to be desired. And then let's push the money there to make sure that they're fully funded to keep thriving.
And if you don't mind, I would, respectfully disagree with Ben in that socioeconomic segregation has always been the forerunner to when we have other kinds of racial inequity. There's no question, it goes back hundreds of years. That's been well documented economically, socially. The reality is that when we put people in a situation that can't be successful and geographically isolate them in certain places, it causes a tax base and an erosion of the fundamental fabric of state programs, their education system, their communities. And that is exactly what's happened in Minnesota, which is why Minnesota is in tough shape. And I'm not going to pick on Ben here because I think both parties are to blame for that, for sure. I know that some of the recent solutions have been held up by my friends across the aisle, but in general, we need to address the economic insecurity, the economic issues as a part of the larger picture along with education if we want to be successful.